Hey guys, welcome back to Horology Biology. So today on the bench we have got an Omega Chronostop. The Omega Chronostop, originally they came out in the 1960s. There were different variants of this model. This is the 35mm one. It has a black dial. It has the traditional Omega style hands with an orange sweeper. The Chronostop is a completely pointless watch. I've touched on this before in other videos because it literally just has a 60-second chronograph. So you press the pusher, it starts the chronograph, and it will just keep going and going and going. When you press it, it will freeze. And as soon as you let go of the pusher, it just resets to 12. You do not even have time to boil an egg.
You mean an egg?
It's not fresh, but it looks super sexy, and that is what is more important nowadays. So inside it has the hand wind mover, which is an 865 caliber. It's kind of like a watered down version of the 861, which you find in the Speedmasters, and it is a really nice movement to work on. So I'm gonna strip this completely down, I'm gonna run it through the cleaning machine, and I'm gonna rebuild it. So let's get on with it. Hey guys, so we're going to strip down this Omega Chronostop. As you can see, it's got the reference 145.009. Now, as I mentioned before, it's a 35mm watch excluding the crown and the pusher. Stainless steel full case, screw back case of course. And we're just going to strip this down now. Been a while since I've done one of these videos, but they take so much time and I've been busy, man. Super busy. So I'm actually trying to find new ways of doing this. So before I get into this, I wanted to ask you guys actually, how would you feel if you think it's a good idea or not if I actually started doing these restoration videos as a live stream? I was thinking about that it might be easier, it's going to show more of it obviously, and after I finish the live stream then obviously I can just save the video on my channel so anybody can watch it at any time. So maybe let me know in the comments what you think about that, but I think that's quite a cool idea. Maybe it's something that could work. So the case is obviously open from the back, and I'm now removing the movement holder screws. Now they're really beefy on this watch, and I must admit I like it because they really keep them firm in the case. And the little clasps as well, they're really bent and angled, so they fit perfectly. So taking off the hands now, we've got the movement out, and I'm using a Presto tool. I'm actually doing this in two stages because I find that the pipe on the seconds hand on this is quite long, so I nip that first and then I just pull it off. And then I attack the hour and the minute hands separately. Don't do it on every watch, but on this one it just seemed that the seconds chrono hand was really high, and I thought I'm gonna pull paint off or something if I go from the bottom. Live and learn, you know. So now the hands are off, obviously I can remove that dial. The dial's in pretty good condition actually. There's one little blemish on it, but other than that it's, yeah, good as new. So take off the dial washer and the hour wheel. Give it a quick inspection, make sure that there's no teeth burst off of that. And then I'm taking off the cannon pinion as well, also using a Presto tool for that. I do most of my inspection, to be honest, after I've stripped down the watch, so what you see on the video is obviously it runs concurrent, but sometimes it can be a day or two once I've stripped it down that I will give it a full inspection. I want to check the parts and the pivots under the microscope, and if I'm honest with you, I don't want to bore you with this, and then once I'm happy, then I will rebuild it. So as always, and you're probably familiar with this now anyway, I always take the balance wheel off, get it out of the way. I hate hairspring work, absolutely hate it. I'm not the best at it, I'm really not, and I hate it. So I will do everything I can to make sure that I keep that balance safe, because I don't want to have to mess around with the hairspring. If I don't have to do it, great. So now the balance is out of the way, I can continue to strip down this movement. And with it being, well, if you want to call it a chronograph, I mean, technically it is. I mean, it's an 865 and it has obviously the center chronograph features, even though it literally just has a second chrono runner. I want to make sure that I just disengage all of these springs to remove any kind of tension. And also what I do as well, whenever I'm working on chronographs, it's just by habit now, I just put the main screws back where they came from. It just saves you getting them mixed up, because there's quite a few. They're all different shapes, they're all different sizes. Some of them are the same, but they're different lengths, and it's gonna cause you problems. So I just find it easier just to basically just put them back where I got them from. Plus they're getting washed as well together, and it's just a hell of a lot easier. So working my way around the movement, I'm just removing additional springs. Anything that's held under tension, you just want to make sure that you get that all released. And one of my springs did go flying across the room. I mean, it didn't go off the bench, thankfully, but it did fly, the first spring that I took off. So that's coupling yoke on. Remove that out of the way. Also want to keep that safe because it's got such a tiny little wheel on it. And then I can continue with the rest of this chronograph disassemble. Movement's not in bad condition at all, as you can see. It just literally just needed a straightforward service, so there was nothing super detrimental, apart from two things which I will touch on later on. I do emphasize it in the video, so I will touch on it when it's appropriate and when it comes up. Now, if you haven't caught that other video that I did with my €50 box, I'm still well happy about that flyback Citizen I got. I mean, didn't expect that. And yeah, they're pretty rare. So I'm just removing the cams. It's a two-piece cam, and this one is basically telling me it doesn't want to separate, so I had to give it a little bit of a tug. Now the operating lever as well for the chrono, get that out of the way. That's held in with two screws, and they're shouldered, so obviously it can slide back and forwards. Additional springs, making sure they're removed, and then I can take off the chronograph runner bridge, or well, they officially listed as a bridge in the manual, but I was always told that it should be a cock if it's only held in with one screw. And you have to be really careful with this one because it's untied, and the pivot on top of the chronograph runner wheel is really small. And they're mad expensive if you break that. Like if you break it, damn, I don't want to know. Just know. So once that's out of the way, there's a little friction spring underneath, which is, it's kind of like bent at an angle so that it creates buoyancy on the runner, so it's not just sitting on top of the plate. So that's pretty much, yeah, if not everything, all of the chronograph features that have been removed. And now I'm just removing any tension from the mainspring, getting that out of the way, because obviously I'm going to break down the train of wheels and I want to make sure that that mainspring is not under tension. So removing the pallets bridge and then the pallets, and as you can see, there is still a little bit of wind in that watch, even though I did dewind it. Now this driving wheel you have to be super careful with because it's on an extended pivot, so there's a special kind of Presto tool that you can get, which I've got. They're quite expensive for what they are because you literally will only use it for these kind of jobs, but it makes it just so much easier. It's got 3 feet to it, similar to a Presto where you remove hands, but you just go over it straight and you can nip it, and it'll nip the arms of the wheel and pull it straight up as you pull up with it. And that, the way of basically doing it like that is so that you're not bending that extended pivot, because it's a very thin piece of metal and it's very long as well, and you can easily bend it. I have bent them before, and yeah, they're a pain in the ass to straighten if you're lucky to straighten it, and if not, you're going to break it and then you have to replace it. So just removing the click spring now, because the crown wheel and the ratchet wheel, they're actually underneath this massive plate. It's a huge plate, as you can see. It's funny as well, because like usually you look at a plate this size and you think, oh man, it would be an absolute nightmare to get all the pivots lined up, you know, trying to get all the pivots in the jewel holes and everything. But it is actually relatively an easy one. I think because it's got so much weight to it, because it's so big, and there's only two real, well, there's the arbor as well, but there's only really two jewel holes on there that you need to line up, so it's not that bad. It's just got a lot of weight to it because it's so big. So once that's out of the way, I can, well, it's already tried to come out. I can take the center wheel out, the fourth wheel, third wheel, and the escape wheel's already gone. And as you could see, the escape wheel, it had its own little cock, which does make life a little bit easier as well. And touching on that as well, I think the third wheel with the extended pivot, I don't even put those in the cleaning machine. It's the same, they have it on the Valjoux 72 models as well, and I do not even put those wheels in my cleaning machine. I do them by hand. So I soak them in a little bit of one dip to first give it a quick clean, and if it needs anything more after that, I can use some petroleum, and then I obviously clean it off with some one dip and then some clean Rodico as well with and an air blower, because I just don't trust putting it into a cleaning machine where it's getting spun around at obscene revolutions and just risk damaging it. So the winding pinion and sliding pinion, they've just popped out nice and easy. And obviously we got the ratchet wheel out now as well from underneath that big main blade, if that's what we want to call it on this one. So set-in lever spring held in with 2 screws, take that out, and then underneath you've got the intermediate wheels and you've got the minute wheel as well. And the thing that I love as well about vintage Omega, I mean, I'm a big Enica fan, as you guys know, but just look at the quality, man, of that main plate. I mean, it's so nice, that nice brassy, coppery kind of look to it. And the other thing as well, I've said it before, if I'm completely honest, with working on Enicas and working on Omega, as much as I love Enica, I much prefer to work on an Omega. You really do feel the difference, like things just fit more snug. Yeah, I hate to say it, but in my opinion, the quality is definitely a lot better. Even though Enica's quality is amazing, and don't get me wrong, it really is. But yeah, out of the two, I much prefer working on an Omega. So that's the movement completely stripped down, as you guys can see. So I'm just popping the balance back in now to keep it safe, so that when it goes in the cleaning machine, the hairspring is all nice and safe. And like I told you before, I don't want to mess around with that. It's the safest way and the best way to clean it. So just pre-cleaning everything now, making sure that all those jewel holes are being pegged through, checking all the parts, etc, etc, and getting it ready for the cleaning machine. So now that everything's clean and everything's looking juicy and super shiny, we can rebuild this completely useless Chronostop. I need to stop saying this and beating up and bashing up on these Chronostops, because don't get me wrong, I love them. I mean, they're awesome watches, but I just still find it funny that it's just something that literally has a 60-second timer and that's it. It's, yeah, like I said, you can't even boil an egg in time on this. That's it. I don't know what she can do in 60 seconds, but not that much. So I'm just fitting the mainspring back in, and if I'm honest, I always hate this bit, man. Like, I'm always scared that it's not gonna just get in the barrel correctly, you know, and shoot out. I've had it happen in the past, and it's such a what's the word I'm looking for? Annoying reaction, you know, when it just jumps, you know, it makes you jolt, you know. It's not cool, it's not fresh. So I'm just applying a little bit of 1300 to the top of the arbor, so where the barrel goes on, and then I'm just using this little plastic press, which just presses it down evenly and nice, making sure that it snaps in place correctly. And now that's out of the way, I can obviously tack on these capstones. I've said it before, simply I just remove them from the Inca block, pull them out with a little bit of Rodico, and I find it easier if I just hold it with the tweezers and then use the Rodico again, because the old oil is just still making it stick. I really find that saves so much time doing it that way, trying to make it come off another way. And I just rub it off the dry oil with some paper, and then once I've done that, I put it in some fix-a-drop treatment, and that's basically so that when I put oil to it, it keeps the oil in one place and it doesn't make it run around all over the top of the capstone. And it's just a very efficient way of doing it. It keeps it in one place, and it just makes it easy because it is such a small area that you're oiling, and the last thing you want is for that oil to go running around everywhere. That's not fresh. So you literally only need to add a tiny little amount, very, very small amount on top, and then you just put it back together. It'll stick together in one and hold itself together with the oil, and then just simply pop it back in the movement. Sometimes they can be fiddly, but this time has been quite chilled. Yeah. And once you've done it on this side, you simply just flip the movement over, and then you do the one on the dial side, and you just repeat the process. It's exactly the same. But it's also important to know as well, and some people don't really know this actually, that a lot of the time on the movements, the capstones, they're actually different thickness, so it's not like you can mix and match them. You need to make sure that you get them in where they originally came from. And I've had that before on watches that I've serviced where the balance has not been running correctly, and then I've realized, hey, let me check something here, and it has been that the case of they've basically, whoever's done it before, they've mixed up the capstones between the top and the bottom, and it won't work. Fine with watchmaking, there's really just one way to do it, that's it, in regards to where things live. And if anything feels that it needs to be forced, then it's 100% wrong. So now that that's done on both sides, obviously I speeded up the underside because it's exactly the same. We get rid of this balance again because I told you, don't want to mess with that hairspring. It's like really not a cool thing to do. And I just put that aside and keep it safe until basically the end, until I need it again. But it's funny as well because I did not actually think I would be releasing this video as the next one before I was going to release the Big Eye. I'm in the middle of recording an Eniker Big Eye Valjoux 232, I think it is, 232 or 234. But unfortunately it needs quite a few parts and it's had some problems, so parts are on their way. And as soon as those parts come in, then obviously I can finish the rebuild. But the strip down's been recorded, the intro's been recorded, so it's a little frustrating that it ran into some serious complications, but that's just how it works sometimes. So as soon as I get those parts in, I can get that job finished and get that video uploaded, because it's a beautiful movement, it really is, and it needs to be seen. It needs to be seen. But guys, if you're liking what I'm doing, I don't really ask this often anymore because I think you should make your own mind up, but I would like it if you did like this video, and if you are enjoying this content that I do provide, whether it's the restoration videos or whether it's the talking watches videos, hit a subscribe on my channel. It would be super appreciated. I'm super happy with everybody that's subscribed to my channel in such a short amount of time that I've been doing this. It really has how do I say it, it's gone beyond my expectations. I didn't think that I would have grown the channel as much as I have in such a short amount of time. So I'm happy that I'm doing something right, and I'm happy that you're enjoying it. So that's the crown wheel that goes on. The crown wheel is a little bit of a pain in the ass on this one, I must admit, because the screw is on the other side. So you kind of have to hold it together with your finger, and then you need to screw it from the other side and make sure it catches. Yeah, and basically screw it in place. So somebody also mentioned, well, a couple of people actually also mentioned to me regarding the screen that I have in the background now with the old retro kind of pixelated images. You can pick those up on Amazon. I think it's called Pixadome or something like that. I saw it advertised and I could not resist. I mean, I really like all those cool retro things, so the fact that you can even put your own images in there and it will pixelate them and you can actually make a GIF out of it so that they can pan across. I thought it would be something super cool to have in the background with Enica logos on, HB logo, you know, and also different watch images and how they come out all pixelated, and I think it's really cool. But I think it's called something like the Pixadrome 64. You can pick those up on Amazon, and they're pretty cool. I think they look really cool for what they are. So just now rebuilding the train of wheels. So the escape wheel goes in, and then we put in the third and the fourth wheel, and then we got the center wheel in as well. Ratchet wheel, of course, sitting on top of the arbor and the barrel. And then, like I told you earlier on, this whole train is just mammothly covered with that massive Watoon-sized bridge. I mean, that thing is huge, that thing is henchy, and it's heavy. And it can look quite daunting, but it's actually not that bad to put it on. Because in a way, what you don't realize is you can kind of help yourself, because you've got 2 points of raised contact. You've got the extended pivot from the third wheel, I think it is. So you've got to push that through one of the jewel holes. So then that's giving you a guide. And then on the other side, you've got the setting lever screw as well. So the only thing that's giving you a little bit of hassle is the click underneath connecting with the ratchet wheel, which you can kind of adjust anyway because you can move the click out of the way. But other than that, it's actually not that bad. And then just popping in the little the little cock for the escape wheel. I actually like the way that this is on its own, and I think this is a really nice touch, because maybe when they were designing this, they did think, well guys, hang on, if we stick the escape wheel under there as well, damn, people are gonna flip. It would be quite a lot, let's be honest. So I just screw that cock down, check everything's all engaged, and as you can see, everything's moving super nice, and then I can just screw stuff down. And that top plate is held in with three large screws, pretty much all in an equal direction, on an equal distance. So now I'm just going to oil up the train. So 90-10 on the escape wheel, the fourth and third, and then the center wheel I put on some 1300. And I also repeat the process on the dial side as well. But I love the way that they made so many different variants of this Omega as well with the Chronostop. A few years ago I have two I think actually, and I must admit I regret selling the last one. But I had the Chronostop 35mm again, but the driver, so exactly the same as this, but basically the dial is on the half side. So if you can imagine, the way you wear it on your wrist, you're supposed to wear it on the inside of your wrist, and as a driver is holding onto the steering wheel, he can look down and see his timer of 60 seconds on his inside of his wrist. And the 12 o'clock obviously is facing basically the center of his palm. And they look really cool, I must admit. I'd never personally wear it, and I never did wear it on the inside of my wrist. I'd be too scared to scratch the crystal. But it was on the original bracelet as well. It was on like a mesh bracelet with Omega clasp. And I do regret letting that one go, if I'm honest. Man, I even have the original box for it as well. But these were back in my foolish days when certain things I should not have sold, and that was one of them. I mean, you can still get them, but I know I won't be getting one nowadays for the price that I paid for the last one. Hell no, that's not gonna happen. So I just added some 9354 to the post, some grease for the cannon pinion. That's just friction fit. That just snaps on quite easy as well. Cannon pinions are one of those weird things. They can't be too tight and they can't be too loose. There's just like this middle ground region that you've got to get right. Otherwise you need to adjust them, whether make them a little bit wider on the inside, or you need to nip them up with a special tool and make them a little bit tighter, but not too tight and not too loose. Similar to super fresh, super nice. So again, I'm adding some grease here to the winding pinion, and then I can put in the sliding pinion as well. Now, as I did say that I over greased it, I've not bothered to grease the sliding pinion because it's interacting with it anyway, so I thought it's got enough. So I'm just oiling all of the posts now for the rest of the components of the keyless works, using 1300 on everything here. I don't know if you guys can hear this, but that noise in the background, that's the fur man, my cat. He's eating. And he always does this, seriously, it's not normal. Like if I'm busy, I'm dealing with something like this, he will come into my area, and because I have his food bowl close to me, and he will basically decide to like eat. It's the same when I'm cooking as well. When I'm cooking, he'll decide to use his poo box. You know, I'm sure he saves it all day, and then he's like, oh, come on, man, when are you going to start cooking so I can drop this, you know? It's not normal. So just adding in the yoke and the yoke spring, and then I just put it onto tension. Again, while I'm just holding it down with some pegwood as well, I want to make sure that it's engaging, and at the same time, while I'm currently in this position with my hand, I just get my oiler and I just slide in a little bit of 1300 between the spring and the yoke, just so that it's got a little bit of lubrication. And now I can put on the setting lever spring, and this covers, it's really cool because not only does it connect to the setting lever, it will basically, so that you can actually engage changing the time and everything. The rest of the plate obviously is covering all of the intermediate wheels, it's covering half of the minute wheel, so it's keeping, and obviously covering the spring and the yoke, and keeping everything locked down and secure, that so it's not going to go anywhere. And it's nice that, I mean, it's a common design, you see it on most watches, but it's just a very nice design that basically does a hell of a lot more than what you actually initially think. So that's just held in with 2 screws, and then I just make sure it's engaged. Also added some 9354 where it's connecting, because it's a high friction part, and obviously when you're pulling the crown in and out, it's metal on metal and it's rubbing hard, so you want to make sure that you're using a high-end grease for that. There's obviously too much on there, as you can see, because it's blue, so I just clean off some of that with some Rodico, and also clean up that setting lever spring as well, where it's gone a little bit grubby. I think there was a bit of grease on my finger cuts when I was holding it while I was oiling it. So what I'm doing now is I'm just dealing with the pallets, and the pallets get some fixed strut treatment, again because I need to I need to oil the exit jewel, and that's what that 9315 I believe it is in front of me. The most expensive stuff for how much you use. I mean, I've had that a long time and I still only use the oil that's in the lid. And to be honest, I think I probably only ever will, because you use a micro amount. I mean, I basically, that little tiny, so you're looking down there on the pallets, the left hand side one, I oil that little shiny jewel 3 times per watch, and that's it. So why it comes in that monster sized bottle, I have no idea, because yeah, I think it will last a lifetime. But here's the thing, they have expiration dates, so it's not going to last a lifetime. I think it's good until I think 2027 or something, and then I got to get a new one. I mean, they're not insanely expensive, but still, there's no way that you will just use it all. It's not possible. So now what I'm doing is I'm just adding in the click spring, because it's on the opposite side obviously of where the click is. See, the click is underneath, whereas the click spring is on the other side, so a little bit different. So I'm just adding that in and making sure that it's engaged. Also adding a little bit of 1300 to it. And obviously now I can put some wind into the watch and I can check that the pallets are engaging correctly, which they are. So you can see that the mainspring is under tension now. I've put a good few winds in it, and we can see that the pallets are moving backwards and forwards freely when I give it a little tap. So this is the wheel, the driving wheel. And I don't know if you noticed this, but I didn't notice until a few minutes later, but I've actually put this in upside down. The smaller end should be on the bottom, and it can make a difference, I'm assuming. Not that I've done it before and left it that way, but I did notice that, again, this goes back to what I was saying. Because you push it down with like a hand press tool, and it just felt, yeah, it felt like I was forcing it, if you know what I mean. And this goes back to what I said, when things feel forced, it's not right. Nothing should be forced. It should feel natural, it should feel fine. So I removed it quickly, swapped it over, and it felt natural and it was good. So now I'm putting in the balance again and making sure that the watch fires up. And the reason I'm doing this is because I only do this when it's like a chronograph based watch. If it's like an automatic or hand winder, then it will be the very last thing that I would do. But when it's a chronograph, I was always told to basically treat the watch as a watch on its own and do everything to it, like add in the basic watch components, the balance, etc., so that it is physically running. And then later on, maybe the day after, etc., then start adding in the chronograph parts to it. So that watch is running, and now I'm adding in the little friction spring, which lives underneath the chronograph runner wheel, held in with just one little screw. Didn't see it on camera, but for some super strange reason, that little friction spring was magnetized. Man, it was all over the place when I was trying to put it on. So I had to demagnetize it and pop it back on. So just adding in the spring. Another thing as well is, which is really sad, is I don't know if you guys can see it on the camera, but there are so many scratches on this movement, especially on the plate. And yeah, I mean, that's why I use brass tweezers. Brass on brass does not scratch as much as if you're using steel. And it still baffles me when I see a lot of people on some of these restoration videos and they're using like steel tweezers and they're dragging stuff around, and I'm like, man, just get some brass ones. They're not even that expensive. And I think it's a lot better, you know. It's easy to scratch things, and if you're using brass tweezers, it's not like guaranteed, but light scratches, for example, just with scraping something, it's going to be harder for you to do it than if you did it with a pair of steel ones. So that's the chronograph runner wheel in, and now I can just add in this cock. And again, being really careful with this, because it's got two little like guide holes on there as well, and you need to make sure that it's lined up. Even though it's one pivot, you've still, like I said, you've got these, to either side of the screw hole, you've got two little posts, and they sink into the plate as well. And yeah, you just don't want to break that pivot. So just take your time with that, no rush, super chill. And then once you know that it's engaged and it's, you know, the pivot's in the jewel hole, then you can just screw it down correctly. And I'll just clean it off a little bit with some Rodico. So now I can start building up the chronograph side of things. So I'm just adding some 9354 to the operating lever, and I just add it to the inside of where the screws will go, so that they will basically just lubricate up against the shoulders of the screws when I pop those in. That's the operating lever spring as well, and the other components. Now touching on Omega again, I mean, another one I had as well was, and I am pretty sure I'm right with that, they did a jumbo Chronostop, and it surprises me that they actually go for less in value than these 35mm ones. And I think, as far as I remember what I was told, they were only for the Italian market, but their cases are a lot bigger. I think they're like around 39mm, 40mm, something like that, and they're super nice, man. I mean, they are. Their dials are a little bit plain, I'll be honest. They're not like a pie pan style kind of dial. They're not sunken, and I've pretty much only seen them with like silvery white dials, but they're nice, you know, same movement, but a much bigger case. Then of course you've got the Seamaster ones as well, the Seamaster Chronostop, and they're super nice. You can get some super nice inner rotating bezels for them as well, some without rotating bezels, some with rotating bezels. You got the soccer one, the roulette one. They're super fresh, they are nice, and they're a super nice size as well for today's market, like around 40mm. Can't go wrong. I mean, even this is like 30, around 35, this one, and it's okay on the wrist, but if I'm honest with you, I much prefer looking at it in a shelf than I actually like looking at it if I have one on my wrist, if you know what I mean. Because yeah, about 36 is my minimum, and it's not like I have a super big wrist or anything, but I am, yeah, 36 is my minimum, and Sherpa guide size like 42, 43 is my absolute max. My super comfort zone, 40mm. 40mm is the one, seriously. Like the Sherpa graph range, that's my perfect size, 40mm. So that's the hammer going in, and just screw that in place. Obviously it's a singular one, so to speak, because it's only stopping one wheel. It basically, when you hit the reset on the pusher, it basically spins it and it hits underneath the chronograph runner wheel because of the shape of it, and it forces it to go back to 12 o'clock or 0 basically. As long as you've got the hand set right, then it will snap every time. And there you go, you see? The little shoulder on it, it hits it, and then bam, it will snap it back to 12 o'clock. So just 90-10 here on the coupling wheel. And I oil it on both sides. It's interesting as well because it's very similar design to what's on like the Valjoux, but on the Valjoux you can't remove the wheel independently. But obviously on the Omega you can, which I didn't do. And I have no excuse for that before everybody starts moaning and bitching off. So that's just held in one screw. Now on the other end of it, it looks like a screw, but it's not a screw, it's an eccentric screw, and that's for regulation. I'm going to touch on that later on because I had some issues with that. So as you can see, that connects to the driving wheel, which obviously is on that extended pivot, so it's pulling up all the power from underneath. Have you noticed that the movement has actually stopped working? It was working fine a minute ago, but it's not working now. The reason being is that the coupling wheel and the driving wheel, the coupling wheel, it's pressed too much onto the driving wheel. So this is the problem. It's too close to it. So this is why you have these eccentric screws that you can adjust. Now you should never adjust them if you don't need to adjust them because they're clearly set. And also what happens is, once you adjust one, chances are you're going to have to adjust the other one, and then the one after that, and so forth. Now on this, there's two, and because it's too close, it's basically creating too much drag. So what I have to do is I have to adjust the screw ever so slightly just to create like a little bit of distance so that it runs more free and more natural. Because if you have more drag, then it's like, I see it in the same principle as what you guys might think if like two hands just start to touch each other, it can stop your watch. Well, it's exactly the same with this. Too much friction, or creating too much drag, and it will stop your watch, which is exactly what you've seen. But the only reason I'm not flapping about it is because I know what it is, so I'm just continuing to build the movement, and it's something that I will do at the end of the rebuild, because it's pointless just doing it now. So I'm just adding all the springs now, making sure that everything's getting put under tension. And you have to be careful because they're quite hard springs, but yeah, if they jump out of their holes, they will fly. Not as bad as those super little thin ones though. So they're not as bad as that, and if you do lose one on the floor, they're a hell of a lot easier to find than just a normal little spring. Because those things, man, they'll stick to your clothes, your hair, your beard, everything. I even found one in the shower once, stuck in my beard. So the watch is running again, but yeah, I'm still not content with it whatsoever. So I did adjust it. So I flipped the watch over and add a little bit of 1300 to the cannon pinion so I can stick on the hour wheel. And we're getting close to that super magical time where everything gets cased up. And then just put it on the dial washer. And then that juicy dial. You see that blemish around, I think it's around 9 o'clock, there's a little blemish. And I'm not gonna go to town on it, no way. So the dial is just held in with 2 screws that we loosened off before, and we just basically nip those up. You don't have to go crazy with them, just nip them up a little bit, just so it keeps the dial feet in place. And now we can put the hands on the watch. Now there's no date, so I can put the hour hand on wherever I want, so it doesn't make a difference, which is cool. No lining up is needed for this. And I'm just going to press that on. Just using a hand press tool for this one. And then I will obviously set it at 12 o'clock, making sure that it's not touching anything, making sure there's enough clearance underneath it. And then I can put on the minute hand as well. And again, just making sure everything is free and not getting in the way of each other or touching. There's that blemish at 9 o'clock I was telling you about. It's like a little oil dot or something, but yeah, it's one of those things that I've discussed. I personally don't feel comfortable attacking it. So last but not least, we need to put on the big orange sweeper. And of course, because it is technically a chronograph runner, it needs to be set at 12 o'clock bang on, so that when you reset it, it flies back to 12 o'clock. So we'll give it a quick test, which I speed up a little bit. Yeah, I'm happy with that. That's pretty much bang on. More than happy. See, I mean, look at this. This is such cool quality. Even the movement holder is brass. It's not stainless steel, it's brass. I like that. It's a nice little touch. Now we can case up the watch. Super nice case. Really nice condition as well, actually. Even the case back is in good condition. And then simply just flip it over. And then all we've got to do is we've just got to put in the crown. And this is when I add grease to the winding stem. I never do it before because I know that I have to put the crown in as the very last thing. So I do it at the end. A lot of people I see it, they do it during the process of rebuilding, but I never bother doing it until right at the end. And now we can put in these really cool movement holder clamps. And they're really nice. They're really bent like a double L shape, so they get in really far down and then they bend over and then the screw compresses them down even further. So that movement's not moving around nowhere. No way. And then just nip those up. and they're quite long screws as well. So guys, if you've liked this video, please hit a like on it. I'd super appreciate that. You can also subscribe to my channel. That'll also give you updates regarding new videos that I'm going to drop out, new restoration videos. Also, if I'm going to start doing this live thing as well, which would be really cool. Just a touch. So that's the first eccentric screw, which is for the driving wheel to the coupling. You see, if you adjust that screw, you can make it further or wider. And that other one I'm pointing at, that is between the distance between the chronograph runner and the coupling wheel. And again, making the distance wider. You don't need these gears to go locked into each other really tight. You don't want that on these kind of wheels. You just need them to engage, but not insanely, if that makes sense. Like too much is a problem for this. It needs to be very, very smooth. Otherwise there's a problem. So also with this as well, adjusted my timer graph so that the lift angle is set to 50 because that's the correct one for the 865 caliber, and then I can check out the regulation. Ideally, this is something that I will do in a couple of days time once all the oils are properly set in and everything, but it's not a new mainspring, but it's over 200, so I think we hit about 220. I'd like it a little bit better, so I'm going to look into it further regarding regulation, but anything over 200 is acceptable. And there we have it, guys, the Omega Chronostop, the 145.009. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it. Super fresh, super nice. And until next time, yeah.